On this day, the 1st of June 1533, Whitsunday, a pregnant Anne Boleyn was crowned Queen of England at Westminster Abbey. It was a moment of triumph. After 6 long years of waiting, political upheaval and religious transformation, Henry VIII had his queen, and she carried within her the future of the Tudor dynasty. But this wasn't just a ceremony, it was a spectacle, an extraordinary show of power, legitimacy and hope. Let me take you through that remarkable day. At 7 a.m, the Mayor of London, aldermen, sheriffs and City Council boarded a barge to Westminster. They weren't the main event, they were there to wait. Anne Boleyn arrived between 8 and 9 a.m, standing under a cloth of state as the nobility gathered. Once everyone was assembled, the officers of arms organised a grand procession. 700 yards of blue ray cloth stretching from the dais in Westminster Hall to the high altar of the Abbey. The order of the procession was precise and symbolic. Gentlemen, squires, knights, judges, nobles, abbots, bishops, all the way up to Charles Brandon, Duke of Suffolk, acting as High Steward. And finally, under a canopy of cloth of gold borne by the barons of the Cinque Ports, came the Queen herself. Anne was magnificent in purple velvet trimmed with ermine. On her head, a gold coronet, one she'd worn the day before at her coronation procession. She walked barefoot, her train carried by the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk. Behind her followed bishops, ladies in scarlet and noble women. And watching secretly from a special viewing gallery hidden behind a lattice screen was the King. At the Abbey, Anne paused at the chair of St Edward before approaching the high altar, where she prostrated herself, no small feat while heavily pregnant, for Archbishop Cranmer to pray over her. Then came the anointing, the solemn orations, and the moment of crowning. Cranmer placed the crown of St Edward, normally reserved for a reigning monarch, on Anne's head. A powerful statement. She held the sceptre and rod, the Te Deum rang out, and she later exchanged the heavy crown for a custom-made lighter one. After Mass and an offering at Edward the Confessor's shrine, Anne finally had a brief chance to breathe before the next stage of the day. The Queen processed back to Westminster Hall to the sound of trumpets, her hands supported by her father Thomas Boleyn and Lord Talbot. Awaiting her was a coronation banquet of astonishing scale. Anne sat under a cloth of estate on the King's marble chair, flanked by Archbishop Cranmer and noble ladies in attendance. Henry did not join her, but observed from a private closet with ambassadors. The service was exquisite. The Earl of Oxford stood as High Chamberlain. Suffolk and William Howard entered the hall on horseback to announce the courses, and the Knights of the Bath bore in the dishes. 80 dishes in total, announced with trumpets and cries of largesse from the heralds. The banquet ended with sweet wafers and spiced wine. The Mayor of London presented Anne with a gold cup from which she drank before retiring to her chambers. But even then she wasn't done. There were formalities and thanks to be made. The day ended around 6 p.m. Anne had triumphed. She'd been anointed, crowned and celebrated. She'd walked barefoot through Westminster, carried the hopes of a dynasty in her womb and held the sceptre of England in her hand. This was Anne Boleyn as her pinnacle, the moment she'd won everything. But little did anyone know that she'd be dead and gone just 3 years later, branded a traitor to the crown. Subscribe to my channel for more Tudor history goodies, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.